We are back for episode 43 of the Auld Triangle. The boys are back in town, as they say. Big show ahead of us here. Lehane, Denis Frimpong joining us. We're going to talk Cage Warriors Dublin. Danni McCormack, the Begley out in Invicta action. We had Anthony Pettis FC. Barely time to take a breath in Irish mixed martial arts, and we love it. We love it being that way. Andy, Caoilte are with me as always. Andy, what's the crack? How was your weekend?
What's the crack? Shooting some hoops, sent you a video, nailed it. Might have COVID, who knows? But sure, look, we're here. We're alive, Ian. We're grateful to be here.
We absolutely
You're all very welcome.
And we're grateful to have Caoilte here as well. Caoilte, what's the crack in your end of the world? Anything happening?
Not much now. Clearing out attics all weekend. Back is broken, but sure, look, I'm happy to be here and I'm just about sitting.
That's the shot. That's the shot. Well, hopefully we won't get you to do too many heavy lifting here for the podcast today. And I'm doing not too bad either for what's we'll get the full round.
How are you?
I had a wonderful kind of weekend.
You feel left out there. No, we didn't ask you. Like you always ask us.
My feelings count too, lads. But I had a nice weekend now. It was great to have the UFC on early, have a Saturday night free. I kind of had an Italian themed weekend. I went out for a nice Italian meal on Saturday night. I watched the UFC. I traveled over to Italy, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, to watch the UFC. You can get cheap pay-per-view access over on UFC Fight Pass Italy. So traveled over to Italy to watch the UFC fights.
Did every single fighter in the card lose? Did you get the full Italian experience?
No. I love it. And then tonight we're thinking about heading over to see Martin Scorsese's new movie, the one with Leonardo DiCaprio and Robert De Niro. So the full Italian experience, the Italian job this weekend. But
I heard that's like 4 hours long or something, isn't it?
About 3.5 hours long, which kind of creates another conversation. Do we want to commit that long? But we'll see what happens as we'll see how the day progresses here.
Almost as long as an Auld Triangle episode.
Almost as long as the Auld Triangle experience. But enough about Italy. Let's talk about Ireland, lads, and let's talk about Cage Warriors 161 in the RDS. Another good show. We had Graham Boylan on last time to discuss the card. Lots of chit chat about whether it was the right place to have it in the RDS, about maybe some of the names and some of the kind of hype surrounding the card. And I thought Graham did a very good job when he was on with us and explaining the kind of the flow of kind of circle of events, the circle of life, if you want to call it, for a Cage Warriors fighter, where we're at the beginning stages with a lot of fighters, but we're not at the beginning stages with the guy who headlined the card, and that was Paul Hughes, who put on a phenomenal performance against Jan Cahagan's first round left hook knockout, followed up with ground and pound, went up, downed a can of forged Irish stout. I mean, it couldn't have gone any better. Andy, I'll go to you first, just maybe a little bit of your thoughts. I know you wrote the article on SevereMMA.com about your thoughts. Head over there, check that out on the website as well if you haven't already. Just your thoughts on the event itself. You were there in person. You got the feel for it. Disappointing, I think, no media row, and it was a little bit difficult for you to get in and around the venue. But you did quite a good job, that being said, getting to talk to everybody and kind of showcasing the experience from your perspective on Instagram and such. So how did you feel about the event? We're about a week and a bit away from it now at this stage, so the dust has settled somewhat.
Yeah, don't mind that article. Firstly, some agent Andy Stevenson wrote that. That's all the polished stuff. You'll get the gritty, the good stuff here in the Auld Triangle. So keep coming back. I really enjoyed the event. Look, this was all about Paul Hughes. As far as when we're talking stars, when we're talking the draw here, the reason why people are truly interested in this event, it was Paul Hughes, and it was because he was coming back with all the talk of the UFC. What's he doing back in Cage Warriors? Oh, this is the wrong call. Is this a step backwards? Like, why is this happening? And then I didn't know how it was going to go, and then it got to the main event, and it was his walkout, and it was even before that. I ran outside, as you mentioned. We're running back and forth from the back. I sprint out. I'm like, I'm not missing this one. Like, I missed a bunch of the fights cage side because you have to be backstage. I'm not missing this one. So I ran out, and all of a sudden Zombies playing. And Cahagan's, like, the way that they have it is there's a little kind of curtain for them to come out from the backstage to make their walk. But Cahagan's had already come out, and I imagine that was probably early. He probably wasn't supposed to. So his song hasn't played yet, and Zombie's playing, and there are just like, it's only a tiny little space where you can start walking out, and there's lads just fucking screaming. Like, I've never seen people scream Zombie with such like anger, like hatred, and like, so there was kind of that moment where I'm like, wow, this is a bit wild. He does his walk in, and then Paul comes out and he has Grace playing. So it starts with Grace and then goes into Nipsey Hussle, and like, Hughes just looked like he was fucking levitating or something in there. Like, he looked like he was at mass, praying or something like this, when his eyes closed, and all of a sudden the song switches up to Nipsey Hussle, and then all of a sudden it's like he goes into this like fight mode where now he's like Paul Hughes the performer, and he's kind of looking around, his head's bobbing, he's nodding, and he's just like, this is my stage, this is where I shine, I'm going to go out and paint a beautiful picture on the canvas here. And the performance that he put on was insane.
Unreal. We'll talk about the performance.
Sorry, I've gone off piste here.
Not a problem at all. Not a problem. I thought you kind of wrapped it up very well there. I was thinking about this. It was like when Grace kicked on, and it's the lyrics of the song. It's like, Grace, please hold me in your arms and let this moment linger. And I think that's what Paul Hughes was trying to do there as well. He was letting the moment that he had right in front of him linger for a little bit. He stood still, he was nodding, he took it all in. And, you know, those are the kind of moments that you need to kind of manifest for yourself. And I'm very glad that he got the opportunity to do that at home in Dublin. And, you know, obviously he missed the chance to do it in Belfast, and just as good for him to get the chance to do it in Dublin. But, you know, he took it all in, and it's not easy, Caoilte, when you have all of the chit chat that has been going on over the last year with Paul Hughes. We have everybody else, you know, being signed, and everybody asking, why isn't Paul getting signed? And, you know, he kind of alluded to it in a couple of interviews with Shawnee and Pizzi. You know, those are difficult times to have to go through, but he put it all to bed. He moved up in weight class, and he put away a really, really dangerous lightweight in Jan Quayhagens. And I think that really has to be said, that Jan Quayhagens is out there knocking out the best talent in the lightweight division in Cage Warriors, and there wouldn't be too many people that would be standing in line to take him on. Not alone did Paul have to bear the weight of the pressure of expectation of his performance, he also dealt with the move up in weight, but he passed every test with flying colours, and, you know, leaves everything else in the aftermath without doubt. The performance itself from Paul, Caoilte, was absolutely sensational.
It was one of those moments where it seemed like that perfect for him, where everything, all the pressure, all the hype, anticipation, he showed that he is him. He is the one that should be going to the UFC next. He is the champion, and he's the best in the division, and one of the best athletes, if not the best athlete in Cage Warriors right now. And that was the kind of cherry on the cake for him in terms of his Cage Warriors career, I'd hope, and he should be off next. He looks sharp. I would admit, I don't think I'd be surprised if he did stay at lightweight going forward. I imagine featherweight is probably the option moving forward. He's fairly
staunch on the lightweight now. I mean, I would have similar enough opinion as yourself, Caoilte, in that, you know, when you get to the UFC, things are a little bit different. The lightweights do get a little bit bigger in there, so I'm very interested to see, you know, if he will genuinely. And look at Andy, he spoke with you. He said that he wants to. He said anytime that he was asked, he's very staunch in the fact that he wants to stay at 155. I mean, it's hard to argue when he's going out and performing like that, but, you know, I think he'd be a top 15, top 10 fighter in the UFC featherweight division right now, in my opinion. I'd be interested to see how he lines up with a couple of the lightweights in the UFC, to be honest. What are your thoughts on that, lads?
Yeah, I mean, like, what kind of solidified, I guess, my belief in what he's saying as far as 155 was, we put it to him like, look, you know, it's all well and good to say I'm 155 now, but if the UFC come tomorrow and they offer you a contract and it says 145 on it, then, you know, does that change things? And he's like, no, like I'm 155, like that's where I'll be going in, 155. Now, I didn't think it was a necessary move up to 155. I thought it was kind of, I don't know, I didn't know if it was like done for like a story, you know, the storyline of moving up and challenging for another title, or to kind of add a little bit of a different look or a different bit of flair to things from narrative perspective, right, like that, but clearly it's not. Like clearly it's, like he said to me, it's for longevity in the sport, where he wants to be able to fight and continue fighting and make weight healthily and compete, and if he feels best. And I mean, man, what we can all speculate, but what we've seen as proof in the cage so far is like that was arguably the cleanest performance of his career. And this is, we're talking about a guy when he last fought in Dublin. We're talking about one of the most amazing pro debuts I've ever seen in Ireland. So I don't know. We will see, but it seems the writing seems to be on the wall that it's 155 moving forward. So yeah.
Yeah, interesting times ahead. And, you know, overall, maybe to finalize Paul's performance, like, I mean, we could sit here again for another 10 or 15 or 20 minutes and say the UFC but should be next, and it absolutely should be next. I don't think it'd be a wasted conversation for us to go down that road again. We've talked about it time and time again on this podcast and on many others as well. The time for the UFC was before this last fight that he fought, but hopefully this doesn't linger too long, no pun intended on the Grace song there, but I hope that this signing gets wrapped up fairly quickly. I hope, you know, a lot of the speculation can soon end for Paul, because I'm just so impressed by this man with, you know, he will never admit it, but there's a lot of pressure on him to get that win, to get a finish, and to do it up a weight class was sensational. Any final thoughts before we move on, lads?
I would just say that, because like I typically will take a step back from the actual performance talk and the technicals, and I'll leave that to the likes of yourself, Ian, or yourself, Caoilte. But I think it's important that on this one we do highlight this, because like that performance to me, and I want to hear, you know, the ins and outs from you, but that showed to me that he's head and shoulders above everyone else in that division. I think it's important that we highlight that, because like what I came away from that fight thinking, whatever about the bullshit of the UFC signings and when it's going to come and when it's not, and it may not come because it didn't come last time. It should, but it may not. But when I came away from it was like, it doesn't really matter if it comes next, because he'll just go in and fight another guy, and he'll probably beat another guy, and he'll probably put on another amazing performance. Like the way he was like a matador with the leg kicks, and then I don't know, it was a fearless performance to me. Like the way he had no hesitation to put himself in danger and to take risk in attempts to land his shots, which he did. So yeah, I don't know, I was blown away by the performance itself.
Yeah, I'm of the same opinion, Caoilte. I wonder how you think about like the general level of his performance as well. But you know, from a technical standpoint, I think I'm labeling Paul a world level prospect in mixed martial arts, not just a Cage Warriors prospect. And I think, you know, any doubts about that should have been nullified when he performed against Morgan Charrier and especially against Vucenic in the rematch of that fight. And he just put a rubber stamp on it against Jan Quayhagens. Like Andy said, opened up with a couple of low kicks, and he was trying to draw Jan Quayhagens out pretty much since from the start, Bell Caoilte, wasn't he? Drawing him out with calf kicks, just getting a couple of looks. And the minute he did try and was successful in drawing him out, that's when he landed that counter left hook. It was just excellent overall. And Paul went into that fight in complete control of the entire fight, in my opinion. And I'm sure you would agree as well, Caoilte. I
completely agree. The fight IQ that he displayed in that fight, just to even implement what he wanted and that land the shots that he wanted, was second to none. And then to get to finish in the way he did, something that we've probably not seen from Paul Hughes much in recent fights, is that finishing power that we got to see. And the fact he's able to line that up and time it so perfectly just shows the level he's at and how it's levels above the rest really at this point. We've seen it in previously his all-around game and the Jordan Vucenic fight, amongst others. But in this one, we got to see that kind of killer instinct of getting the fight over as quick as you can and just get in, get out, take as little damage as possible. It was flawless, I must admit.
Absolutely. Very exciting to see what's next for Paul Hughes and everything like that. Let's run through the rest of the cards. A mixed bag. In terms of results for the Irish talent on the card. Let's stop and talk about Jordy Back's defeat by submission arm triangle choke of Ryan Shelley round 2. Very disappointing, obviously, for Ryan Shelley. You had a good first round. To me, it looked like the takedown landed very impactfully and kind of wobbled Ryan. He looked a little bit out of sorts after that takedown, in particular before the submission came. Andy, did you get the chance to witness this one live, or I'm sure you've watched it back at this stage? Your thoughts? Look, at you spoke with Ryan ahead of the fight. This was kind of labelled as a kind of a comeback fight for him. Now he's dealing with 2 losses in a row in a really, really talent-rich featherweight division, it has to be said, but not to be for Ryan Shelley on the night.
Yeah, like it's another tough loss for Ryan Shelley, and it leaves us in a place, or it leaves Ryan in a place where, you know, it's hard to know. It's hard to know what's next. Like, does he maybe take a bit of time off and regroup and reset, and then come back? But he's been kind of labelled, and look, I've been labelling him as like a prospect, as someone who could be pushing towards title contention here soon in the Cage Warriors division. But you're staring down 2 losses now. Like, you're not at that level yet, or not that from a fighting ability, but you need to win some fights to get back into that conversation. Even like it's a stacked division, and yeah, I suppose he's probably at a bit of a crossroads now, where these guys are going in there, they're fighting for not much money on Cage Warriors with the hope of winning a heap of fights, getting to a title and kicking on from there. That could still come in time for Ryan Shelley, but he has to go into rebuild mode now. So it's another tough loss. I'm sure he'll be back. We've seen other fighters come back, and I don't expect Ryan to kind of disappear or anything like that. But I think maybe a little bit of time off, and then come back at it maybe kind of mid next year.
100%. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Not too much really to add to that assessment, Andy. Good. It was a really good assessment, and yeah, we wish Ryan the best. Hopefully, we'll get to see him back and in flow next year. Caoilte, I'm going to stop at Lehane Hill for you. Another night that really didn't go his way. Obviously, taking a fight at welterweight on short notice against a guy like Ewan Davis can lead to certain problems like this. He, in fairness, he didn't really look on at all for the entire fight, in my opinion. I thought, I didn't think he looked as sharp as what we've seen him. Maybe that was the lack of weight cut, or maybe, it's hard to kind of go into these fights and not knowing if you're fighting or not. Like, I mean, a week out, Andy, you spoke with Leon, and he had only found out pretty much a couple of days before that, which is not really time to kind of get yourself
earlier that day even. Yeah,
like, so I mean, that's 7 days you had here, and I'm just basically speculating here, Caoilte. It kind of looked like that as well. It's we talk about it a little bit, especially with the Volkanovski fight recently, is that there's like a switch that goes off, and that switch goes off when you actually do have a fight announcement. You do have a kind of an end goal and an opponent that you're going to face off. And, Leon didn't really have the chance to switch on until about 7 days before the fight. And unfortunately got caught in that Auld Triangle choke in the second round. Your thoughts on the performance?
Yeah, I can only agree with what you said there. He didn't look quite there for this one. And it shows how cruel this sport can be at times, because before this fight, he was on such a tear, and we were really excited. There was potential for a huge matchup on this, and this could have been perfect card for him to have a massive matchup at his natural weight class that he fights in at lightweight. Obviously, he's gone up to welterweight, and it just doesn't look like it's for him really at lightweight. That fight kind of showed that maybe there's a few different variables involved that maybe come into place here, but overall, it wasn't ideal for him on the night. I think we've seen a lot better versions of him, but I straight up believe it's definitely a learning curve, and one that maybe he knows now he won't go back and take these fights on short notice or in welterweight, and we'll get to see the lethal version of Lehane Hill that we've seen in the last few fights come back in next.
I'm sure we will get the chance to see that as well, and he'll also be very disappointed in that result. He did have some good moments, Andy, throughout that fight. I mean, it wasn't all doom and gloom, but ultimately, like when we're comparing his performance, we must compare it to what we've seen previously. And to me, due to the circumstances, perhaps we just didn't see a Lehane at 100% in there on Saturday night, because I think a Lehane Hill going in there at 100%, probably does a lot better in a fight like that, in my opinion.
Yeah, and maybe I do think like a lot of credit has to go to Davies in this as well. Like, I thought he really came out at it with a rapid pace, put it on Lehane early. We didn't interview him, but I saw Lehane after the fight backstage, and he said like he wasn't necessarily hurt at any point, but like, Davies was landing some heavy shots. Now, I thought Lehane rebounded very well, but like it was just a mistake made when he went down into Davies' guard, and to be fair to Davies, he locked in that submission very, very, very quickly. So yeah, it's a learning one. It's a learning one for Leon Hill. But again, yeah, a guy who's kind of blasted back onto the scene after a period off with a heap of finishes in quick succession. So that's the risk you take. You take these fights in short notice, and in quick succession, you can get to 7-8, fight win streaks, and you could be in a position where you're calling for title shots or in title contention, and then on the flip side, something like this could happen, and you have to get back to the drawing board. But look, he'll be back. We've seen him so many times this year.
100%. Like, I mean, it's not as if to me, he had an off night, in my opinion, and he got caught. So, I mean, you can work on things like that. You can improve it. Those fights in quick succession too, they have a toll on your body. So it'll be interesting to see Leon back. Hopefully, I would like to see it at lightweight for sure. And it'll be great to see him. He'll probably be egging for a one maybe towards the end of the year, but might be best leave it until next year for Leon and to bounce back from that. Coming from behind, Paddy McCurry picked up a sensational win over Samir Kadhi. Two top guys. Me and Sean did a preview for this. He reckoned Samir Kadhi was going to be a future Cage Warriors world champion. I myself reckon Paddy McCurry is going to be a future Cage Warriors champion. He was on with us last time out. And, I think in some terms we could be both right on that assessment. I think Samir had a great start to this fight. But, Paddy was talking with Andy Caoilte after the fight. He said he had a foot injury, had a lot of hurdles to come over, and that fight was behind, but he still pulled it out with the fire. And that, to me, showcases that, we need to kind of maintain that excitement around Paddy McCurry in the middleweight division and how far he can progress, because, sometimes, fighters will want to go out there and win with a perfect KO or a perfect submission, but sometimes you have to showcase a little bit of heart. Sometimes you have to showcase, that if things aren't going your way, you do have the ability to pull it out with a fire. And I think Paddy McCurry ticked off all of those boxes in this fight.
Certainly did. He had a lot to deal with in this fight, especially with having the foot injury alone. He's got to bite down from the very off in this case and just hope that it doesn't give way at any point and not cause you any issues throughout the fight. And look, he didn't have it all his way, and he showed incredible heart. I think he was pulling that. Maybe the foot injury might explain the fact that there was times he was kind of looking for that guillotine when he was getting taken down. Now, ultimately, it ended up working. And
let's be honest, we were all thinking it, lads, weren't we, when we were watching this fight? What the fuck is he going for the guillotine again? Obviously, we didn't know. I'd have to hand on heart and say that, but I mean, like Caoilte said, it ended up working in the end, so we can't be super critical of that. But the foot injury definitely had a part of it.
I'm not going to name it. I was watching the fight with one of his teammates, and that's exactly what we're talking about. Like, why isn't he framing up? Why isn't he trying to get back to his feet? Why is he going for these submissions? The rounds are ticking over and he's losing them. So he rubbed it in all of our faces, and in spectacular fashion.
hindsight is a great thing. But Caoilte, how are you feeling about Paddy and his progression in the middleweight division there? There's a great gap there for him to go on and build off this win. Obviously, he's going to have to recover from his injuries. But there's a couple of great fights and lots of great opportunities for a guy like Paddy in the middleweight division and Cage Warriors and beyond that as well.
I'm massively excited, especially after that. Like, he came up against what looks to be a top prospect. Sean was talking to you about and how high he is on Samir Kadhi, and he showed his level, the level that we saw against James Webb from Paddy McCurry. And now it's a case of, well, who's next? Hopefully it's not a case of that he's kind of egged on too quickly and he's trying to fast tracked. I'd like to see that decent build up and he gets progressively up the rankings and then finally gets that fight that he was speaking to us about of I think it was him versus Will Curry, if I'm correct, that he mentioned on the last podcast, which I'd love for a title in the end.
Yeah, be very interesting. I don't think he's going to be
of course.
Yeah, you don't think he's going to be heading over for any stem cells or anything like that to cure his injury, given what you were saying to Andy about potential steroid use in mixed martial arts. He has Paddy always has lots to say, and it's always great to see. Well, I'm very excited about Paddy McCurry and his future progression. We shall move on. We'll keep things rolling, Andy. Takamandu went out there, produced another solid performance against Alexander Sashapiriv. Unanimous decision win. 30-27 on all three judges' scorecards. Kind of said to you after the fight he wasn't feeling that 100%. But, you know, I'm not going to be too, like, there's performance there for me tells a lot. We're back on a winning streak here now for Takamandu, right? Maybe it wasn't a perfect performance. Maybe he mightn't have been 100% happy with the performance, but we're on a win streak right now and we're in a flow of things, and it seems to suit Taka quite well. I thought he gave an absolutely fantastic interview with you before the fight and just was really open and honest, and he was always honest with us as well on here as well, and I think he spoke very well after the fight too. But ultimately a good solid win and never really looked in any trouble in this one.
Yeah, I mean, I think that a win like this, like, I came away from this event kind of thinking that when we're looking at these fighters and when we're looking at the early pros, I probably need to temper my expectations. I probably need to temper, you know, this fast track and the labeling of like, this guy's the next prospect and this guy's going to be the champion, this guy's going to the UFC, and just chill the fuck out with all that and just let these lads kind of simmer and let these lads develop. And it's fights like these for Takamandu that you need these 15 minutes in the bank. Look, it's not going to blow the roof off the place. It's not going to set the world alight, and it might not, you know, get you a huge fight, but it's important to get that win. It's important to get the experience, and I'm sure that Taka will take a lot, and to, you know, he to put it bluntly, like, I was joking with him after. I was like, I'm gonna have to wash my hands after shaking your hand, man. You are sick as a dog here. You could hear it in his voice and his nose. So like, if he's like, you know, a full blown cold or flu or whatever he had, and he's
maybe he's to blame for your sickness now, Andy.
And like, you know what I mean, like, and everyone comes into a fight with something, like whether it's an injury or whatever. So like, everyone has a kind of an excuse in that regard. But like, still, it's important to be able to go in there, put on a composed performance. I'm sure he'll have more work to do on the wrestling side, but I think he's improved in that regard. His takedown defense has looked improved, and he kept Sashapirov at bay a lot of the time with the jab and the leg kicks, and it was a composed performance for me.
Making the decision to fight, right, and then fighting through that, you know, that's going to give you a certain air of confidence in preparation and knowing how to deal with those scenarios as well, which is very, very important for a young prosperous fighter like Taka as well. And he went in there and got the job done. At the end of the day, unanimous decision, 30-27. I mean, he can take a lot from that fight, and I'm looking forward to seeing his next one in the bantamweight division. I'll move over to you, Caoilte, for Ger Harris, who took on Ryan Hewitt. Won in a very entertaining fight. 30-27 on all three judges' scorecards. I mean, if you were reading this and, you know, there was a few kind of negative chit-chat around Ryan Hewitt and his level of experience coming in here, but my goodness, he put on and gave Ger Harris a fantastic fight in there, didn't he?
Sometimes records don't tell the full story of these fighters, and you could easily go on Tapology, have a look and see, or Sherdog, sorry, and see the records and see the names, the wins, losses, whatever you want, and come up with an impression before you even see the fighter. And I am probably guilty of doing that before I even saw Ryan Hewitt. And he went in there and he has a chin of steel. He's as tough as nuts, and he puts up a good fight. And he really gave Ger Harris a good fight. But Ger Harris, wow, exciting, fast-paced. That fight could have been fight of the night, to be honest. It was brilliant. The two lads put it all out there. I thought Ger Harris looked so sharp in there. He's showed all aspects of his game and really what we expected from him, and how it's really exciting for him moving forward. I know he's calling for that Cage Warriors contract now as well, wants to follow in the steps of Neil Seary. So it's a really cool storyline to follow, and I'm excited to see what's next now with all that, really.
Absolutely. Very interested, Andy, to see what is next for Ger Harris, because what I liked about this performance is that he went in there against a tough guy, had to answer a couple of questions, went through 15 minutes of very valuable cage time, and I feel at this stage it would be a shame in Ger Harris's career if it was anywhere else other than Cage Warriors. I think it's the absolute perfect place for him to kind of nourish under the kind of guidance of the matchups that Ian Dean will be able to give him in the flyweight division at Cage Warriors as well. And ultimately, you know, he wants that goal of getting to the UFC, and here we have a recipe with Cage Warriors in getting fighters to the UFC. So I think, you know, all roads should lean down to Ger Harris wanting to sign on further with Cage Warriors. And I'm wondering, is that what you'd like to see as well?
Yeah, that is what I'd like to see. You know, if that's what he wants, then that's what I want to see. And I think this was a smart bit of business, specifically for this event, where you have, cage warriors coming back to Dublin. Ger Harris brought a good crowd. There was a great atmosphere in the venue. That was kind of the first time that the crowd really kind of found their voice, was when Ger was fighting. He went in there, it's a guy. Same McCoilte, but when I saw this opponent's this match made, I was like, Jared's going to go in and blow the doors off this lad. This guy's lost to East Street, and that's what I expected to happen. I was surprised Jared didn't get to finish. However, he put on a very entertaining display. He was throwing a variety of strikes. He was entertaining the crowd, and I think that's a successful night in the office. And I think that's one that cage warriors should look at and say, right, this is a guy that it makes sense to, for a variety of reasons, to give him a multi-fight contract in a division where there's not a whole lot of flyweights out there. So you can make some entertaining fights. And what I'd love to see is Jared to get that multi-fight contract, and for us to see him fighting, not necessarily in quick succession, but maybe 3-4 fights in 2024, maybe even one more before the end of the year. I'd like to see that from Jared. It seems that that's what he wants. And who knows where we could be in a year's time. But again, he's early days. There's no point in rushing things right now, but just get him in there, get him a multi-fight contract, and let's start seeing him against who cage warriors have to offer.
Yeah, I mean, Jared, he's talking about trying to get into the UFC for next year, and I'm not sure how I feel about that. I think you concentrate getting yourself that contract, building your way towards the cage warriors title, and then see whether that's going to happen before October next year. Well, given history and the way fights are set up, you are a little bit tight for time, but it'll be interesting to see. I think the relationship between Ger Harris and cage warriors is one that is really going to suit both parties, to be honest. So a very, very exciting times as well. Andy, you have something to say before we move on?
Well, just the last thing I'd say is that just to remember that Ger has only relatively recently moved over to Team Rhino, so he spent his entire, and a lot of credit should go to Owen Roddy for how he's developed Ger over the years. Obviously, he's no longer training under that gym, but Ger was Owen's protege growing up, so he should get a lot of credit in how he's developed Ger. But Jer's now fighting in Team Rhino, so it's going to take a little bit of time for them to mesh. It's clearly going well so far. He's obviously has great things to say about Neil Seary, and I'm sure they'll have a great working relationship. But it's still early doors there, so there's a bleeding in period, or whatever you want to call it, where before kind of things get a bit more normal. And I don't know. I think you get what I'm trying to say there. I'm stumbling over my words.
A little bit of time to gel into
gel. Thank you. Thank you for the assist there. I forgot how to speak.
Glad to help you out there, Andy. No worries. Last but not least, Nick Bagley did defeat Michael Quinn via submission the first night of the card. We will stop. Last fight we'll talk about is Solomon Simon, who picked up the Auld Triangle choke in round 3 against Marco Sarajavi in I knew I was going to mess that up. Sarajavi in the third round. Of course he was going to win, lads. He was a guest on the Auld Triangle podcast before his fight. I mean, we have a really, really impressive record, but obviously it's easy to talk. He had to go in there and do a Caoilte, and he did it very, very impressively. I would say one of the standout performances of the night for me from Solomon Simon.
Yeah, of course, and probably the best performance of his amateur and professional career today. I thought he was incredible, very well rounded throughout. He went up against a really strong grappler in Sarajavi and kind of negated that grappling at times, and even when he was on top, made it almost impossible to get him off. Landed some big shots, looked very strong. Really leveling up now and kind of making those strides and kind of paving a good way for himself to progress in cage warriors and build a name for himself in that 145 division. Really impressive, and maybe that kind of move to Dublin. The balance in between Waterford and Dublin is helping him level up a little bit quicker as well, because he's getting all those bodies like Paul Redmond around him on a weekly, daily basis, which must help. And really showing the cage, and incredible performance from him.
100%. That work with Paul and with the lads up in Team Rhinos, and he seems to have kind of instilled a level of killer instinct in Solomon Simon. And one thing, and I look for little things when I see guys fight, I look at Solomon Simon and how he performed in that fight, and how he won almost every exchange, and how he was dominant in every clinch exchange and was winning the entire fight, but still was pushing for the finish in round 3 and would not have been happy unless he got the finish. And I think that tells a lot about the development of Solomon and how he's kind of transitioned over from the amateur ranks into the professional ranks, where you have that little bit of extra time to work towards that submission. And look he's finished all these fights at professional so far, so he's doing everything right. And I'm massively impressed about the development of Solomon Simon. And at this stage, he's coming towards his late 20s now. We've got to be getting a little bit, maybe you're talking about maybe letting time for guys to kind of develop a little bit. With Solomon, we have time, but maybe not as much time as maybe a guy in his younger 20s. So very excited to see his progression and curious to hear what you think of his performance and everything like that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a whole lot to add on this one, surprisingly, because I usually don't shut up. But when I think about Solomon, I just think that he's an example of transitioning over from the amateur ranks to the pro ranks at the right time. Like, if you go back and watch Solomon in the amateurs, like he's a very, very experienced guy. Some of his later fights, he was frustrated. He was not getting the decisions that he wanted. Things weren't all going his way. But it seems that since he's gone pro, something has just clicked in him. Where, as you said, there's that killer instinct. He's finishing lads left, right, and center. And yeah, look. I think Gary Wallace and Bobby Meade do brilliant work with him when he's down in the home gym. But I do think it's also helpful for him to be going up to HQ in Rhino up in Dublin, as you were talking about there. I've seen the way that the lads in there train, and it's cutthroat in a good way. It's positional sparring, it's grappling, positional exercises, and every single one of them is trying to beat the others. Like, it's pure competition in there, which it probably is in a lot of gyms, but that's what you need.
100%. You would get that at Team Rhino Waterford as well, with like Sagaria and the lads. Not to disparage what those lads.
But there's more bodies, right?
Yeah, you have more bodies, and you have more and it's also experience as well, lads. You have the chance to go in with Paul, who's seen and done it all, and lit with Neil Seary and everybody else who's been in and around. Plus, you're in an environment where people are getting prepared to fight as well. So look, I think he's made it work, and we're finally seeing the results. And he's still a cult sheet to myself and Caoilte. I know you're going to try and take him in, Andy. But we can't be having it if he didn't have such a fantastic nickname.
If you ask nicely, I don't know. We can't be getting everyone in these days. I don't know. I'm getting a lot of abuse lately for being a dub, So this is really just bullying on the podcast at this point.
Deservedly so.
I've never said anything to anyone. So.
Let's move on, lads. Another absolutely huge...
Hold on. Now, we started with I'm glad we're going to call you out, now. You've forgotten this, but we didn't forget, because we started with Paul Hughes, who was the main attraction, who is the lad who's going to the UFC, and we're going to finish with the next guy to make their name as the headliner for Dublin in Cage Wars, and that's James Jimbo Slice Sheehan, who went in and fought Ollie Santaladi. And I'll tell you what needs to happen next for Jimbo Slice, because he won't call it for himself, because he's a humble guy, but there's a fight coming up for the vacant title between O'Meal Brown and Janice Backer in London in November. And Cage Wars, if they're smart, what they will do is they will fly James over, stick him cage side, and stick him in the cage to face off with the winner in there, because he's the man who should be fighting for the title next. Oban Elliott, he took that loss, fair enough, grand. Oban Elliott's now in the UFC. James came back here. He's the guy that's kind of standing, with Ryan losing, with Leon losing, with other lads who are maybe not as tenured in Cage Wars for the Irish scene. He's the guy. So if you want someone to be fighting, an Irish guy, to be fighting for a title at some point in Dublin or in Ireland, in Belfast, in Cork, wherever, it's James Sheehan. Another great performance from him here. Had to come through some adversity early on, but got the decision win and another win for Jimbo Slice.
100%. Yeah, apologies, Jimbo, for letting you slip there. That was a fantastic performance, and important too to kind of bounce back after that defeat of Oban Elliott. There would have been a lot of questions, there would have been a lot of self-reflection, but he went in there and got the job done. Another really good performance from James, and I agree with everything that you said too, Andy. You got to try and make that the story is there, the history is there. It's a kind of a fight that makes itself. So let's get Jimbo over there. Let's start causing a bit of trouble over across the pond, and let's get that fight happening. Really looking forward to that. Now let's talk about Danny McCormack and D. Begley. Good. You called me up on that. I've totally skipped by that fight by mistake. But Danny and D are in action this Friday at Invicta 54, a fight that will take place in Boston, Massachusetts. in the House of Blues there too. So looking forward to seeing that venue, seeing what they can muster up. But this is a huge fight for Danni, and I kind of epitomizes the success of women's mixed martial arts in Ireland lately. We have Danni defending her world title. We have Leah McCourt, who is winning some massive fights as well. Obviously, Sinead Kavanagh has been winning some good fights. Obviously, things didn't go her way the last time out. We've got a bunch of different great amateurs. Obviously, Dee Begley fighting. You know, a win for Dee Begley on this card, I mean, could put her right in the mix for the flyweight title, which is vacant as well. But we'll stop at Danni McCormack and talk about Danni McCormack and her fight against Karolina Wojcik, a rematch, Caoilte, from the first time that they fought at amateur level. Obviously, both of these women have massively developed since that time. But looking back at that fight, it was crazy, number one, to see Paddy Houlihan in Danny's corner in that fight. But number two, was a really close fight. And I spoke with Danny a couple of weeks ago. I'll definitely put out that interview as well this week about, you know, it being a very technical affair, and I can expect it to be that way this time as well. But, you know, Danni doesn't want to go out there and put herself on the back foot straight away. She's very kind of adamant about that after what happened in the Valeska Machado fight. You know, she's having a championship mindset heading into this one, and this is her time to shine, to go out there and to kind of, you know, win a very winnable fight, in my opinion, for her. Would you agree?
I would agree. And the fact that she got the opportunity to fight 5-5s in the last fight will make a big difference now. She knows what that is like, is able to prepare for that, knowing what the later rounds feel like, those extra 10 minutes, what toll they take on your body. And then obviously she's the benefit of having fought Karolina Port, obviously being a long time ago, but they do have that know-how about each other, having fought before, and it'll be brilliant. Massive opportunity, and if a win here could really top off her Invicta career and maybe launch her into a UFC opportunity. But for the fight itself, I could imagine it being very technical, very exciting. Perfect fight to headline that card, especially in Boston as well, where there's so many Irish.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we didn't get the Invicta Ireland show, Andy, but we got maybe the next best thing over there in Boston. There'll be, I'm sure, a lot of supporters heading over there with Danni, and obviously the Boston crowd love anything to do with Ireland as well. But a really, you know, we're talking about, you know, Paul Hughes at Cage Warriors going out there and proving that he belongs. It's kind of similar enough scenario here for Danni McCormack heading in here after a fantastic title win. She has a chance to defend it and really stake her claim, as Caoilte said, to see what's next for her with a possible UFC signing. We know that's what she wants, but her focus is really, really on this fight and defending her title first, because you've got to do that before anything else happens.
Absolutely. And look, as you've already kind of discussed, it's a great story, this one, the rematch, for anyone who doesn't know. Like, they have fought before, but it's also, they fought 6 years ago when Danni had a total of, I think, 1 minute of MMA experience in the cage from official fights perspective. So like, you can almost, when people rematch, sometimes you can take something from the first fight, but in this case, I think you can almost just throw it out the window, where like Danni has come on so much. And I remember, like, I'm just thinking back to our last fight. Like, I remember the beautiful day where we got to record the podcast all together in SBG, and we were talking about the fight, and like just how it was one of the most gutsy performances that we've ever seen from an Irish fighter. Like, it was Pendred King-esque. Like, it was just unbelievable. So Danni has been through the fire, and now it's her turn to sit atop her throne and defend it in a fight that, as you mentioned, this is a winnable one. And geez, I'd love to see Danni go in, and I know from speaking to her, the feedback that she's kind of got is that they're looking for young fighters, looking for undefeated fighters, looking for fighters who finish. But like, I'd love to see her go in and get a win here and kick on to the UFC, because like, to come through the last fight as she did, if she can go in here and get the win here, and look, hopefully a finish as well, but regardless, she can go in and get the win here. As you mentioned, Paul Hughes, Cage Warriors is kind of the traditional route for fighters to go into the UFC, but so is Invicta on the female side. So this is what Invicta is supposed to be. She's gone in there, she's had a couple of fights, she's won the title, now she's going to defend it. Why not Danni McCormack if she gets through here? But look, she's got a tough fight in her hands. Obviously, they both last competed on that same card, where Wojcik, I think she had a split decision in a tough fought fight. So yeah, it's all to fight for here for Danni McCormack.
I think this one is going to be a super entertaining fight as well. I mean, Danni does get into exciting fights. I don't think it's in her genes not to get in an exciting fight. Obviously, speaking to me, she wants to be maybe a little bit cleaner starting off, and that you don't want to have to be dealing with being on the back foot from the get-go. Easier said than done, obviously enough. You're not really ever planning on going in there and being put on the back foot. But she said she's tried to correct a couple of those potential errors and tried to settle in a little bit better, and she's dealt with a difficult task here with Carolina, where it's that Carolina's a fighter that's going to kind of fight on the back foot and kind of wait to counter, which will probably try and prompt Danni to kind of come in, but it's kind of getting into the pocket safely, getting off your shot safely, and getting back out safely is going to be the key to Danni's victory and success here in this fight. And I think the longer the fight goes on, the more plays into Danni McCormack's hands as well. We'll talk about that fight so much more. Really excited for that. That's on Friday night, only a couple of days away. You'll be able to watch that fight on YouTube. You'll be also able to watch Dee Begley on the card as well. She is making her Invicta FC debut, and very excited for Dee to get the chance against Christina Williams in the flyweight division. I'm just excited that we're going to be able to watch this fight live, guys, and not have to watch it on a chest cam or over a dodgy stream or anything like that. And I'm very happy for Dee to get her opportunity. And I think the placement of this fight, who she's fighting against, obviously Christina's coming off a loss on her last fight at Invicta 51, but she's a difficult opponent for Dee, and it's a good opponent for her to be fighting at this stage, Caoilte, of her career. And a win here for Dee Begley, that puts her right in line for a shot at the vacant title in Invicta at flyweight division. So I mean, there's a lot on the line with this fight. This just isn't your bog standard fight here.
Yeah, it's a perfect opportunity to, put yourself into flyweight title contendership. Obviously, someone coming off a loss, but compete on some of the best promotions around, compete on Bellator, compete against a lot of experienced opponents. And I think it's a bit of a step up in competition that she would have gotten in Combate as well. So it's a very good opportunity for her on a very big card to kind of, announce herself on the Invicta stage.
Big time. Very excited to see both of the women in action. I'm looking forward to seeing those fights. Like I said, YouTube is where you'll catch those on Friday night. Moving on, Oktagon Challenge has kind of taken the regional mixed martial arts scene by storm. Obviously, we're 6 or 7 episodes deep right now. It's been a really good show. We've all really enjoyed it. We've talked about it here again. And we're going to talk to one of the guys who's in the finals, and that's Denis Frimpong, ahead of his fight on that Manchester card on November 4th. So I'm going to head on over to Denis to talk about his time in the house, the Oktagon Challenge itself, and the upcoming fight as well.
And now I am delighted to say we are joined by who many are saying is the bad boy of Irish MMA currently, Denis the Menace Frimpong, hot off the heels of his couple of wins, not just one but 2 wins over an Oktagon Challenge, and now he's scheduled to be facing George Staines this coming on November the 4th at Oktagon in Manchester's AO Arena in the finale of Oktagon MMA Oktagon Challenge. Denis, welcome to the show. Good to have you on.
Thanks for having me on, lads. Yeah, it's been a while, but we're finally here anyway.
Yeah, we're just saying you're well used to this, the lights, the camera, the glitz, the action at the moment. You're probably sick of having a camera and a microphone shoved in your face, are you?
Yeah, do you know what? It's not too bad. Sorry about that. Yeah, it's not too bad. Obviously, like on the show, it was a bit more stressful because we were all I was on weight for basically 3 weeks. I had to be ready to make weight on a 4 days notice. So obviously carb depleted, all of that, and living in a house with people you're fighting, knowing you might fight on a 4 days notice window, and then as well, while you're cutting weight, them having cameras in your faces and all that. Well, it was a pressure test basically more than anything. But yeah, obviously, it gets you used to later on down the line, for where I want to be in a couple of years. You're going to have to go through that anyway. People see Conor and Colby and the more successful guys in the sport, and they just think it's just go to gym, train and show up and fight and win, and that's it. But you've got to go through all the media stuff. You've got to go to, well, they have press conferences usually on like the Thursday or the Wednesday of a fight week, and you're depleted, and you have to stand in front of a load of people and get slagged off by your opponent potentially. So yeah, it was a good experience as a whole, in every aspect of the game.
Yeah, I think, Oktagon have done a brilliant job with these reality TV shows. Oktagon Challenge, for anyone who hasn't seen it, you can check it out on Channel 4 Sport and on the YouTube channel. It seems to be doing pretty good numbers there over there as well. But for me, like it's almost a throwback to the early days of Tough when it comes to the challenges, the back and forth. And I think a lot of credit has to go to, a lot of people, you'll probably rub a lot of people the wrong way, but a lot of credit has to go to you guys, especially on Team Ireland and your good self, for making it entertaining, making it interesting. The experience overall, being in a house where you've number one on your team, you have guys who you've actually already fought, and then additionally you have Team England who you're eyeing every single one of them up every day as potential opponents. What was the overall experience like?
Honestly, before I got there, I didn't know what the format was going to be. So I knew obviously the first fight we couldn't fight another Irish bloke, but I didn't know what it would be for the semi, so I wasn't sure. I was eyeing everyone up, to be honest. When I first got there, I was like, right, I could fight any of these lads, you know what I mean? And at the end of the day, like, we knew that there's only going to be one winner at the end of all of it. We're all fighting for the same contract. So it was weird, obviously after a couple of days, I warmed up to the Irish lads, and we kind of, with Paddy as well. Paddy was like a really good general in that sense, that he just brought us together as a cohesive unit, and kept us from getting at each other's throat as well. Which was good. The experience overall was sick. Obviously getting to be in Slovakia for 3.5 weeks of summer. We got a well better summer than we had over here. Obviously it wasn't really a holiday, but it was nice to be in a villa and like have a pool and all that kind of stuff, and just having crack with the lads as well. Doing the challenges themselves were like some once in a lifetime things. I probably would never do anything like that again. Or I wouldn't have ever done anything like that if I hadn't gone on that challenge. So, it was cool. There's some good fights as well, just from a watching perspective. Obviously, my own fights were exciting to be in as well as to watch. And overall, it was I can't fault it. It was brilliant.
The main storyline throughout the season, I suppose, was you versus Hassan, and it seemed to be that you were the one kind of pushing this from the very beginning. Why was it Hassan? What was it about him? How did we get to a point where you were essentially stalking this lad for the better part of a few weeks until eventually fighting him?
So basically, I think at the start, like the day we landed, we got to a hotel. They did like a little scrum with all of us. And I before they even started filming, I've already started throwing like verbal jabs at all the English lads, and he was the only one that bit. The rest of them I think they sort of knew me from the amateur days and stuff like that, and knew that like George definitely knew me. I tried calling him out a load of times. I've been looking for that fight for ages, to be honest. But then I think the rest of them sort of knew not to get involved in the verbal chat with me, where Hassan didn't. He's from London, so he's not really like, I don't know, there's a bit of a disconnect between like south of England and north of England as far as fighting goes, unless it's like on big shows like Cage Warriors and stuff. So I don't think he'd ever heard of me. So when he gave it back and he bit, and then he started like going back and forth, and I was just willing to go to continue going when he wasn't willing to keep going. So it was a bit of a war of attrition with the verbal jousting. And then it just kind of got to the point where I was like, right, like he's my victim now, it was like at a point where I have to fight this guy now, so that was what it was.
You've always kind of done this throughout your career, from what I've seen anyway. I mean, you've always been very outspoken. We did an interview a while back when you were an amateur, where you were, I won't even bother going into, but you called out SBG basically. Mm-hmm. I remember seeing you kind of hounding, was it Chris Morris? I think you were fighting. Relentlessly, the poor lads. Why do you, when you approach this stuff, is it mental warfare to you? Like, why do you kind of lean so heavily on that ahead of the fights?
I think like I definitely don't have any negative feelings towards any of my opponents before I fight them, but I do like them to have some negative feelings towards me. I feel like no matter what, every fighter that does MMA has a bit of an ego. You know, they say, "I'll leave egos aside and all that," but everyone does have an ego. I've got an ego. Everyone's got an ego, you know. And the more you can tweak that ego a little bit, it makes people a little bit more stiff, a little bit more tense, a little bit more wanting to land that big shot. And as you saw in my fight against Bo, when you're loose and when you're flowing, that's when you land the shots. Do you know what I mean? It's not the big, tense shots that you're ever going to land. So I think that's it's a part of my game. You know, obviously it's not the whole lot of my game. I didn't really abuse Bo too bad, and everyone seemed to think like, oh, he can't get in his head. How's that going to affect his performance? But it's more so like getting that little 1% or 2%. I mean, like if I make him 2% stiff or 1% stiff, maybe it gives me that little bit of an extra edge. But also I just enjoy it. I just enjoy messing with people a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, you know, me and my mates are all at it all the time. I've definitely said worse things to my mates than I said to anyone on the show, and they've said worse things to me. And you know, that's me mates, not someone I'm gonna actually get into a cage and try and hospitalize. So it's what it is.
We saw a lot of it on camera, and I guess they only can show a certain amount of what you can say and all the jabs you can throw at each other on camera and publish it. Is there anything that crazy went on off cameras that maybe wasn't aired that you can tell us about?
Well, one thing I can tell you about that, I was surprised it wasn't aired, to be honest. I thought that was going to be like the highlight of that episode. Basically, whenever we were water ballooning Hassan a couple of days before the fight, and I put the spider in his hood, that whole ordeal lasted probably about 5 hours of us like knocking on his door, him coming out, water balloon, him going into the bathroom to get himself dried off so he could go back to bed. We locked him in the bathroom, opened his room window, like just left it ajar. He went back in the room. We opened the window, water ballooned him through the window in his bed, had to go out and get changed. It got to the point, yeah, he got so pissed. Yeah, this was like 2 days before I fought him as well. But he was so pissed off that he tried to snatch the camera off the cameraman that was in the house with us. Like he was mad. He was going mad. He was like, "Stop filming this shit! Like you're encouraging it and all." Like he was going mad. Nearly assaulted the cameraman. The four of us had to like fucking run out and basically be like, "Yeah, if you touch that cameraman, we're all just gonna jump you." So it did get pretty heavy like at one stage, but yeah, like there was a lot. You have to understand, like each episode is an hour long or so, but it's filmed over 4 days. And in those 4 days, you're probably doing at least each person's probably doing about 2 hours of interviews, and an hour and a half to 2 hour training session, the challenge, all the stuff in the house, and then everything else in between. So, and then the fight itself. So, like a lot of stuff was just sort of lost on the wayside. You know what I mean? But we've got the memories, and part of that makes it a little bit special as well. That like there will be parts that only the lads that were there, the people that were there, will ever know about. You know.
I guess with them, like it's nice that you have the memories and the mystery of it, but with the whole experience and having, as you mentioned, to do all the interviews, the challenges, and then go in and fight, you're cutting weight alongside all that. Does it make it very difficult? Are you tired quite a lot of the time when you're balancing training and all these different kind of variables at once?
Yeah, it was. It was definitely a pressure test. This is what I'm saying. Like it was. There was points where people were breaking. Yeah, like, you know, we all went a bit fucking stir crazy at one point in the house because obviously we've no phones or anything in the house, no Wi-Fi, nothing like that. So there was a point that, like, as you say, we're cutting weight, we've got a fight, we've got all these stresses. Yeah, we're in a foreign country that we don't really like know what the rules are out there, if you know what I mean. So yeah, they got to a point where some of us got a bit nuts. Like I remember there was one point, me and all the Irish lads were in mine and Matthew's room, and we were conspiracy theorying to bits. We thought they had the house bugged. Like we were all going. And you know what? It was only when we went back in the gym the next day and spoke to Paddy and mate, Paddy was such a godsend, mate, because he just sort of was like, lads, you're getting cabin fever. You're just going. Do you know what I mean? Like just actually think about what you're saying. Some of the conspiracy theories we came out with were nuts, mate. So yeah, it was a wild experience, mate. But like I said, definitely a good experience in the sense that like it showed that I can still perform to my best capabilities under that sort of a pressure. I don't know if I'd ever do tough though, to be honest, because that's like 6 weeks, isn't it, or 8 weeks or something, mate? With a load of Americans, mate. I'd end up banging someone out.
How long was it you guys were over there for?
It was like so it was like 2.5 weeks for the first stint, and then we all flew back the day after I fought Hassan. We were back home for like a week, and then back out there again for like another week.
And go on, Andy.
No, I was going to ask. There's parts of it. I remember when the thing with when Jake McHugh lost, right? And there was the incident with the jersey, and they shot a scene where you were running up. Like, are you lads allowed out on the piss then in between these fights, or what? Are you
we basically, so after each fight, so like it would be like 3 days. First day would be the challenge, and there'd be 2 days of like weight cutting, interviews, all that training, and then the fourth day would be the fight. So on those days, whenever there was a fight, after the fight, we'd be allowed to. We all had our own cars and stuff like that. They'd given us their own cars. Each team got a car. So we drive into town and we get a bit of food or something like that. Obviously, because I fought last on the quarterfinals, I wasn't really able to enjoy any of that. But the lads were like having a few beers and stuff. But we didn't. I don't even think we went on the piss that day. I think we were just in town for food, and I think we hit up like a casino or something like that. Like, it wasn't even that late. It was like we were on the way home, and then we seen them in town, and then we decided to run up on them.
Obviously, the first fight they had was against Hassan. You finished him with a head kick, and then some follow up strikes. When you're speaking a lot, it puts an extra pressure on you, right? Like it puts a bit of a target on your back. Do you feel that, and is it extra satisfying to you've talked the talk and now you've gone and walked the walk?
I think it is a bit of extra pressure, and like the English lads were sort of trying to make this whole thing that like, oh, I think Denis just chats because he's not confident. But the reason I chat is because I am confident, and because I know that I can deal with that pressure, and I can perform. So yeah, it is what it is. It's one of them things. Like you say, like I could have got knocked out, and it would have looked terrible for me. You know what I mean? But the thing is with MMA, people have short memories. When you see with Usman now, everyone's saying he's done because he lost 3 in a row. To be honest, I thought he won that last fight, but it is what it is. Even though he's been the most dominant welterweight probably since GSP, and I think it's the same when you lose. People you might lose. People chat shit about you for a week or two, then the next event happens, and no one really gives a fuck. So it is what it is, mate. Like you say, I think I thrive under the pressure. I think the pressure almost makes my internal monologue in the fight a little bit more determined. Like when I got dropped against Bo, it was like that internal monologue was like, oh, mate, you can't have chatted all this shit and then get knocked out in the first round, So that kind of keeps me going as well in the fight. It's a bit of everything.
The pressure kind of adds more focus when you can. Like, I mean, you can add pressure onto yourself in various different ways when you go in and fight. Obviously, the pressure of shit talking, that's going to be great when you're winning, but obviously it'll come back and bite you in the ass when it's losing. You can also add the pressure of, fighting in your backyard, selling lots of tickets, everything like that. So, I know that can be used in a positive way, even though if the result is negative, it will have more a negative effect. So it's kind of like a double positive and a double negative. But overall, would it be fair to say that it adds to your focus and like to what you need to get done to win these fights?
It definitely does, because like I know I have to go and back up what I said. So all through camp, I'm training hard. I'm not cutting any corners. I know that I have to back this up. So I got to put the work in to be able to back it up. So yeah, like you say, it is a double positive and a double negative, but I think like I'm a hard worker, anyone that has ever trained with me in any of the gyms I've ever been in, if you ask around and you ask like what my work rate is like, people will tell you. I'm one of the first in the gym and I'm one of the last to leave, late evenings in the gym, Saturday evenings when no one else is in the gym, I'm in there grinding. So that's where the confidence comes from. It's not like I'm just confident aimlessly. I know my skill set. I know how hard I've worked for it, and I know I can back it up.
You talked about the Hassan fight briefly and also the Bo Gavin fight. Two great fights. I really enjoyed watching them both. Two standout fights in the series so far. How do you feel about those performances, given everything that you've talked about? Like, it's hard in that scenario to fight at 100% optimism with, everything else that's going on, short cut weight cuts in quick succession as well. How do you felt that you dealt with that and your body dealt with that during the actual fights?
Yeah. So I don't know. Obviously, you remember before Tony Ferguson fought Justin Gaethje, it was he made weight twice in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, wasn't it? And people said that affected him. I believe it did affect him. I had to make 70 kilo twice in 2 weeks. So I fought Hassan 14 days exactly to the day before I fought Bo. And it was rough, mate. It was rough because obviously after the Hassan fight, I've come home. It was midsummer. I've come home to Manchester and gone to like a mate's barbecue, had a bit of food, maybe a little bit too much food, blown up to like 82 kilo. Then I have had like basically a week and a half to get back down. But to be fair, the second weight cut was quite easy. I only did a bath and a bath and a wrap in it, and it just came off me. And I'll credit Paddy to that. Like he had the know-how as far as doing the baths at the right temperature and all that kind of stuff. Obviously, Yannick McGee, nutrition as well. My nutritionist just get me all the details and like staying in around the same weight and like getting the weight down rapidly and all that, and as healthily as you can. Obviously, it's not healthy, whatever way you want to look at it, but as healthily as you can. But yeah, as far as the performances, obviously, I can't really ask for more as far as a Hassan KO. There was a few little bits I found sloppy looking back on, because it's been months since then. I feel like I've leveled up 10 times since then. So obviously there was a few bits I felt like were sloppy. But I got a head kick knockout, first head kick knockout I've got. It was clean as well, so I can't really fault much about it. The Bo fight, if anyone hasn't seen that fight, go watch that fight. That was like a Stephan Bonner, Forrest Griffin fight. I think it was brutal. A lot of blood, which I enjoy. And yeah, like I just felt like I found this flow state in that fight where I was just everything I was throwing, I was landing. I wasn't trying to like land big shots. I was just touch, and like landing really nice, clean shots. Obviously people might not know about it as well. I broke his arm in the first round with a head kick that he blocked. So he went to put his hand up and broke his left arm. And then his right arm in the same round got dislocated in one of those grappling exchanges. I think when I've wizard on it. So he had no arms for the next 2 rounds. So people were wondering why he got so gun shy in the second and third round. It's probably because he had no arms. Do you know what I mean? He was probably a bit wary of that. But obviously not to take away from my own performance in it. Like I think I just found the range on him, and I found his timing. And I went through some adversity in the fight as well, and he's a tough cunt. He took some shots that would have put many a man away, and I believe if I hit George with any sort of those shots, it will put him away.
You use your length very well, Denis, when you're fighting, especially for a guy who's coming with a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu background like yourself. So, obviously, is that a focus on the development of your striking game, like knowing that you're going to have a size and a reach advantage going into these fights, and especially was on showcase in the Bo Gavin fight, where you were just keeping them at the end of your jab, you're keeping at that kicking range, and you're using those tools also well when you're coming in against these guys. Is that something that you really focus on when you're preparing and training?
I mean, even from the days in DCA when I first started striking, it was always a big focus was the teeps, long jab, long distance weapons. When they get in close, elbows. So I think you really got to see that on full display. Obviously, I've now refined that to suit more of an MMA style in Manchester Top Team. So I've always had good striking coaches around me. Obviously, I do have a background in jiu-jitsu. I feel like, not that I've moved away from it, but I feel like I use jiu-jitsu almost like a hand grenade, I come into the room, let's say as an analogy, I come into a room, I'm going to use my pistol first, then maybe a knife, and then I might just fucking use a grenade and blow us all to bits, you know. So that's like the grenade in my back pocket now is if someone does manage to take me down, they quickly realize that they're not safe down there. It's not like somewhere that they can land damage. You see both of the fights, I was taken down, I was put on my back. Neither of them managed to pass my guard and stay there, and they didn't really manage to land any damage while I was on the bottom. And if in fact I was landing more damage from my back. And as we all know, since 2016, the scoring criteria puts damage over everything unless the damage is the same. So I think I've developed a much more complete MMA game now than for example, when I fought Solomon Simon. And now I'm just going to start working on the last few little aspects of my game. I believe I need to be world class.
The whole season, I think I've seen so many of you guys give praise to the coaches you've had, in particular, as you mentioned throughout the podcast of Paddy Hoolan. What was it like for you to be learning from him and having him as a coach, having him in your corner, and of course having Shamrock as well, who you would have known from previously as well in DCA and so forth?
Yeah, so obviously I'll go with Shem first. With Shem, it was really good having him there, because obviously he knows my style. I've known him a long time. He's cornered me before for like 3 different fights. He cornered me my first 2 MMA fights at amateur, and he cornered me again with when I fought Solomon Simon. So he knows my style, he knows my game. It was good to have someone like that there. He also brings a lot of knowledge, to be fair. He has a good eye for the game. He's a very cerebral based athlete. Paddy Houlihan, I can't say enough good about having him there, mate, to be honest. He was just such a good general, such a good guy to have around in terms of just keeping the cohesion between the team, keeping our spirits high, getting you pumped for the fight, just getting you ready for the fight. Learned a lot from him as well about the business side of the sport and stuff like that. Obviously he's very successful even just besides the fighting. He's a politician, he's got a business, so he gave me a lot of tips as far as what to do in the future, as well as everything else. Then obviously the few little, I would say I maybe picked 2 or 3 little things that I learned while I was over there with him that have become a big part of my game now that I'm using to kill people. So yeah, it was excellent, to be honest, and quite surreal as well, given that when I first started training martial arts with jiu-jitsu, Paddy Houlihan was someone that I looked at. He fought in the UFC in Dublin, and I watched it live, and I was like, wow, he's one of the guys. I put him in the same bracket as the Conor McGregors and the Artem Lobovs and the rest of the guys that fought for the UFC at that time, that first wave of Irish fighters. And I think we're starting to see now a second wave of Irish fighters coming into the UFC with Rhys McKee, Caelan Loughran, and obviously probably soon Paul Hughes, Sean O'Bannon, Ian Gary, I believe soon myself as well. So yeah, man, it was just surreal, honestly. It was proper surreal.
Just on Paddy there, I noticed one point in the series he wasn't telling Armand what to do, he was just giving him advice. And that was one bit that we got to see on camera. I just wanted to know, is there moments off camera where he would take you guys to side and just give you, as you mentioned, bits of advice on how to manage your career and how to kind of move forward?
Yeah, obviously. So I spoke to him we spoke to him a lot about we spent a lot of time around him, and obviously about contracts and how to be careful of different people that will want to come in to your life when you start reaching that level of success, because they want a bit of the pie. Because obviously he would have been around Conor at the time when he was first coming up, so he would have seen all that, and obviously I'm not getting on that level yet, but you start to see little things, and he kind of kept us wide to that. How to manage when you sign a contract, the small prints, because and not getting fucked over, and how to invest your money while you're making money, because it's a short career and it can end at any time. And just how to make clever investments and not just go squandering your money on Gucci jackets and Rolexes and stuff like that, but actually have a business plan in line, because not everyone's going to get that Floyd Mayweather fight. You know what I mean? Not everyone's going to get that money, so you've got to sort of like, yeah, make the money, invest it, and make sure you can continue to make money after you're retired, because it's like I say, it's a short game. You know, I don't plan to be fighting after 40, to be honest, and like I plan to live till I'm at least 80 or 90. So that's a long time to be not making money if I haven't invested and then made a good business strategies before I've retired.
Dennis, it sounds like Paddy's giving you some great advice there. Am I right in saying you're 28 years old?
28, yeah.
28. So look, you're kind of starting, I wouldn't say necessarily at a disadvantage, but you're starting a lot later. Or where are you at in your career now? You've just turned pro relatively recently, 28 years old. I imagine that puts a little bit of an expedited timeline on your thinking towards, right, where am I going now with my career? How do I want to shape it, etc. So when you look at, obviously we're looking at the Oktagon finale. You're talking about there about wanting to be in the UFC at a certain point. Where do you want your career to go over the next number of years? Like, do you have a plan set out?
There, but yeah, obviously, I started martial arts when I was like 21 or 22. Didn't really start MMA itself until middle of COVID. Like 2021, I think I had my amateur debut in 2021, August 2021. So that's like just over 2 years ago. Yeah. And since then, I've had 14 fights between amateur and pro, including the fights on the show. So yeah, I'm an active guy, yeah, I understand that I'm not 21 and I won't be able to like sort of, do what a lot of these 21-year-olds do, which is fight, 5 to 10 cans or like easier fights and then build their record till they're 8 or 9 or 10-0 and then go on and get into the UFC, but I plan to just fight the best guys, like the two guys I beat are much more experienced than me. Bo Gavin made his amateur debut in 2012. He's been fighting years, and Hassan's like 5-1, I think he was. And like right now, the guys I train with, I train with UFC guys, PFL guys, Bellator guys. So I know the level I'm at. And I believe I'll go into Oktagon now. I'll run through a lot of their guys within a year or two, get that belt. And then with my personality and my marketability, I don't believe that Dana White won't give me a call. I think he'll be straight on the phone to me to try and get me in. I've got an Eastern European mom, an African dad, grew up in Ireland. So as I say, like you've got a lot of different angles of approach there in terms of marketability, and I'm not an idiot, I'm quite like I say, I started the sport late. I wasn't went to university, all that, like, I could have done anything else, to be honest. I could have done something else, but this is what I wanted to do, because I believe that I can succeed in this sport. So yeah, I might be starting late, but I mean, I'm pretty sure Francis Ngannou didn't start MMA till he was 27 or something, and by the time he was 32, he was world heavyweight champion. So it's not one of them sports you have to be in the football academy from young and all that kind of stuff. Obviously, it helps. It might give you a bit of an advantage, but as we just saw with Bo's been doing it since he was very young, and it didn't help him out too much. So.
Look, as you said, it's going well for you so far. So, long may that continue. Obviously, and just to touch on that, it sounds like you do have an amazing backstory, and I realize we haven't really touched on that at all today, so we'll have to get you back on another time to dive into that. But the next step lies through George Staines in the finale. When you look at that matchup, firstly, maybe before we go into the fight itself, there was a bit of back and forth. Obviously, he took exception to speaking about his grandmother on the show. What is the atmosphere, or what are the feelings like towards one another currently outside of the cage, I guess?
I just think he's a bit of a coward, to be honest, and like a bit of a weak-minded individual. As I say, I have DMs going back a year and a half where I was calling him out for a fight. Not just myself, Curtis Campbell was calling him out for fights. He wouldn't fight either of us. He was more happy to just do little shin pad kickboxing matches in the IMMAFs against guys 8 to 10 kilos lighter than him. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, he's good at what he does, which is sniff the balls. hold people down, wait for the timer to go out, and then raise your hand like you've won a fight. But realistically, that's not my way of winning a fight. It's not a real way to win a fight. So yeah, I mean, I think he has a lot more animosity towards me than I do towards him. I've been wanting to fight him for a long time. And I'm the guy who made him cry on national TV. You know what I mean? Not just a little few tears, like he fully bawled on TV. And he showed me the chinks in his armor through that. So I think he'll come in there emotional, and he'll end up walking onto something hard and sharp. And I think I'm going to put him away in the first round, to be honest. He's very highly rated, but I think after this fight, they're either going to understand that I'm even better, or they're going to say he was overrated. You know, either one, I'm going to make it look well easy. But I think after I knock him out, and to see what he goes on to do later on in his pro career, because I do believe he's good at what he does, but I just think I'm better.
Is there a limit? I know that you use trash talk to your advantage, you know, from a mental warfare perspective. Is there a limit that you will stop at, or like, do you think there should be boundaries when it comes to trash talking?
It depends. You know, at the end of the day, like I said, we're going to get in a cage and we're going to try and hospitalize each other. You know, it's a dangerous game. So if you're hurt by words of any sort, then maybe go play tennis. To be honest, I, like you say, old school tough. I'm pretty sure Tony Ferguson was talking about people's kids and all. You know what I mean? Like, so do you know what I would say? For me, maybe kids might be a step too far. Kids might be a step too far for me, like me personally. But I think everyone has their own limits and lines, and some people's cross over others.
We'll take it baby steps with Denis Frimpong. Kids for now, there might be a few more things off limits in time. Who knows? Well, look, it sounds like you're very confident coming into here. It sounds like you're looking for the finish. What's your final prediction for the finale against George Staines?
Honestly, I think first round knockout. I think we're going to see a very quick knockout. I know Carlos Ramola just broke the Oktagon record a couple of weeks ago. I actually saw it live. Of fastest knockout in Oktagon history. It was 7 seconds, so got to beat that.
That'd be something special. Well, look, Denis, I really appreciate the time here today. Again, as I said, if anyone hasn't seen the Oktagon Challenge Series, Team Ireland versus Team England, it's a great watch. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I know the lads did too. You can check it out on Channel 4 Sport on YouTube. Very accessible. And look, we look forward to seeing you compete in the finale come 4th of November in Manchester's AO Arena. Denis the Menace Frimpong, thanks for joining the show today, and appreciate the time.
Yeah, appreciate it so much, lads. Thanks for having me on. And yeah, if anyone wants to come over and support, I'm pretty sure tickets are pretty cheap now. They're probably still going to come down a little bit, so it's not too far of a flight over from Dublin. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks,
nice
Denis.
for having me on, lads. Yeah, nice one.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you. Lovely stuff. Great to hear from Denis there. Always has plenty to say. And very excited to see his progression in the finals and everything like that. So always great to catch up with Denis. But we shall move on. A couple of other little housekeeping notes. Cara McNally was defeated by Tobias Lee at KSW last weekend. Obviously a tough fight for Cara McNally, guys. I know, Chris, you got to see a bit of the fight as well. Took a lot of damage to that calf about 30 seconds into the fight and didn't really recover after that. Showing a tremendous heart that he battled through and actually hurt Tobias at the end of round one. It was just an absolutely mad fight altogether. But ultimately, he was unable to continue in round two with that leg injury. After the fact, I see his arm in a cast. I see that leg injury is kind of obviously going to be affecting him a week out. We apologise. We didn't get the chance to kind of preview that fight, Caoilte, but it was an absolutely crazy fight from what you've seen anyway as well, I'm sure.
Tough one for Card. You know, it's probably not how he wanted his KSW run to go. His KSW run to go. He's 2 losses in the bounce now against a very tough opponent as well. Didn't get to recover from those shots from Tobias Lee, who's very good in his own right. But look, the heart that he showed in that fight is just incredible, really. And credit where due to Carl to managed to stick in there as long as he did after being hurt. But look, onwards to the next one. Hopefully he gets a good matchup in KSW next time, and one that we could see him get a win with, because we all know how good he is and what he can show.
100%, yeah, 100%. We wish him a speedy recovery. Cage Legacy have announced a slew of shows right across Europe as well. Very exciting to see if all of this can be pulled off. Maybe we'll get the chance to speak with Declan or somebody about that. But we've got shows lined up in Dublin towards the end of the year. I know there's a St. Patrick's Day show that they're going to put on next year as well. But also, just trying to get up all the venues here because there is so many. We've got other shows announced for Cage Legacy Liverpool in May 2024, Cage Legacy 22 in Rotterdam in July 2024, Cage Legacy in Malaga in August 2024, and Cage Legacy 25 in December 2024. And there's 2 separate posters for that, so I'm not sure. But I mean, yeah, big moves here by Cage Legacy, lads. Obviously, you've been a focal point in the regional scene in Irish mixed martial arts. They're looking to spread their wings across Europe as well. So pretty exciting times in terms of that. And, leaves a lot of questions on how they're going to be able to pull it off. And like I said, hopefully we'll be able to talk to Declan or someone there and kind of get a little bit of insight. But, exciting things expected for Cage Legacy in 2024, guys.
100%, yeah. Like this is mad. I gave if you recall, my bold prediction for Irish MMA for the year was that Cage Legacy we're not going to put on a show, and I'm fucking delighted that I've been proven wrong.
You're like, it couldn't be other. Yeah, like you aren't even proven wrong. You were proven tremendously wrong.
We got to September. I think the first show was. So,
I predicted 2 Irish world champions, lads. Did we get there?
Well, if you got, do we have 3, 4? That's too many. You said 2 exactly. So
I said 2 exactly. So no, well, I mean at least 2. I mean, so yeah, it'll be interesting to go back on those predictions. But nonetheless, it's fantastic to see. It'll be great. Huh?
Where did this at least 2 come from? It was 2 exactly.
Well, if we're going
to
get
3, if you get 3,
the rules work out.
Let's back to Cage Legacy. It's Jesus. It's an aggressive schedule they've set out. But fair, like if they can pull this off, my God, fair play to them. I'm sure it's very, very tough to put on shows abroad. I'm sure there's a lot of costs involved. It's a mountain to climb to do that, but I'd love to see them expand. I want to see them, just consistently putting on shows, which they have been for years now. So if they can do this, I saw Declan Kenna was over in Liverpool and all with the next gen guys. So maybe he's planting some seeds there to get some of the local fighters on. Fair play. Yeah, but it's an aggressive schedule. So they'll have a lot of work to do.
Anthony Pettis FC was on this past weekend, lads. A slew of Irish amateur fighters on the card. Let's run through that and the results of all the fighters who were fighting there. Let's start with, obviously, the cancellation of Owen Sheridan's fight was disappointing. We were looking forward to seeing him there. They couldn't make it happen. His fight was off. Matis Sarahof's picked up a lovely knockout win in the first round. Clipped Leandro Lima with a head kick and followed up with a spinning black fist that landed flush, and then Lima was face planted, and that was a fantastic KO. To you guys, I'm sure. Caoilte, that was a fantastic, brilliant performance from Matisse, who is kind of finding his way now, and it's good. A couple of wins in a row for him now, but good win by spinning back fist. Spectacular KO. Anthony Pettis was sharing it. He was going wild cage side, and it's a good time to be able to perform a good knockout like that.
Incredible, really. Yeah, I had to watch it back a few times to figure out, because the angle we first see it at when on the stream doesn't show how he gets knocked out. So all of a sudden Lima's just collapsing on the floor. It's like, what the hell's happening? But when you look it back, you see the angles. Incredible to throw that back fist after the kick and with such precision and catch him was brilliant, I must admit. And a highlight reel performance for Matisse, and should probably line up a step up in competition next time against a good opponent. He's 2 on the bounce now, He had a hard run before that in when he was at Brave, I believe. So look, great to see him with Anthony Pettis FC. Maybe he sticks there, maybe goes elsewhere, but lots of opportunities for him now, and we'll see what's next for him.
I mean, Andy, a performance and a knockout like that, I mean, it'd be baffling if Anthony Pettis didn't come back for more for Matisse, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I would expect. Is he? I actually can't remember which. I know Pettis has signed a number of fighters, so I don't know if Matisse falls under that bracket. But yeah, I mean, like they'll be looking at him again 100%. And I agree with Caoilte. Like I think a step up in competition here now is like Matisse is ready for this. That was spectacular. Highlight reel, Kasaka Post is sharing it and everything. So yeah, this is a brilliant night at the office for Matisse Zaharovs. It was a weird one as well because like I saw so many people. The way that the back fist kind of caught him, it was almost like hidden. Like people were like, "How? Like what happened there? Like did he hit a kick? With a kick or?"
I had to look at it a couple of times myself because it was the impact of the kick which just grazed the top of the head. I was like, yeah, that can be an impactful shot, but it was the reaction of the face plant. It was like normally that doesn't bring a face plant reaction. Normally you just kind of lose your equilibrium when you get hit there in the head, but it was the spinning back fist that he followed with right flush on the chin. Night, it was all over. Brilliant.
It was well placed.
Stuff.
Yeah, because he did it. Like he did a great job. He was using his side kick early on and kind of just gauging the distance and timing him. And then once he threw it, as soon as Lima went into counter, he got clipped. So yeah, great stuff.
Shout out to Paul Brown and shout out to his announcement of the next result, and that is Kikyo, who defeated Sam Lynch by an Auld Triangle choke. The biggest story in mixed martial arts this weekend was the shout out of the Auld Triangle podcast at Anthony Pettis FC. And it was another fantastic performance by Kikyo. Obviously, SevereMMA Amateur of the Year. Hasn't really had the chance to compete all that much this year through injuries and other things going on. This was another typical Kikyo performance, piled on the pressure, Andy, and ended up, forcing Lynch into that takedown and into that Auld Triangle choke. And he gets another great win ahead of, talking about maybe heading to the Worlds a little bit later on in the year. But the performance on the night from Kikyo was really, really good after such a long layoff as well.
Yeah, it was clinical. Like it was clinical. As soon as he got taken down, he lashed in the Auld Triangle. So very impressive. And as you said, to come back after a period of inactivity with injuries, etc., to come back and do that is impressive. And yeah, it just kind of it underlines the reason why we and a lot of other people are high on this young lad. He's got a bright future. So it'd be interesting to see how much longer he stays at amateur before making the transition to pro. But really, really promising stuff here from Kikyo, and shout out to McMMA. We've got some really solid young lads coming through from the amateur ranks up into the pros.
Yeah, obviously Jake Knight, also a part of CMAC, his fight was pulled at the last minute as well. Lewis Byrne got in there, Caoilte, and he put on a good performance en route to a unanimous decision win over Brooklyn Thomas. Just really, really, really good one. I know difficulties watching this fight in full because the stream was a little bit off, but from what you did see of the fight, I'm sure you were impressed with Lewis's performance.
Yeah, I didn't get to watch most of the third round. It was kind of unwatchable for a lot of it. Even parts of the second round, it was jumpy, a bit of a nightmare. But look, from what I've seen, the performance looked good. His grappling looked strong. His timing looked on point on the feet. He was in and out quickly. And yeah, really good performance from Lewis Byrne to go over there and get the win. He really impressed. And what's that? I think 18, 19 fights from an amateur now. I can't imagine he's many far away from heading off to the pro ranks soon, but maybe there's a few more fights left in him first, because some very promising signs there, especially in that fight.
Absolutely, yeah. Moving on, I think Jess Paulo, actually Arian Henry didn't get the win. Obviously, he was unlucky in that fight. Stream was kind of all over the shop for this one as well, Andy.
That fight was fucking mayhem. That was the fight of the night for me. My God, Arian Henry didn't get the win. Not necessarily what you want to be coming away from a fight, especially an amateur, saying, but my God, the chin on that lad is insane. I thought the ref could have stopped it in the second, but he never stopped. He was diving for those takedowns. He threw up the flying triangle at one point, and it seemed almost had it. But look, he took a bit of a beating in this one, but at the same time, he came out swinging. He's tough as all boots, and he went to absolute war here with a guy, Goydam, who I believe think it was that lad. Yeah, it was Goydam. Caolan Loughran actually messaged me after the fight saying like this is one of his main training partners and gives him like some of his best looks in the gym. So a tough opponent here. But yeah, an absolutely insane fight, and hats off to Aaron Henry for the heart that he showed, because he was at a moment where I thought he was out and getting finished. He had a big smile on his face, looking at the corner, looking at the ref, and I'm like, this lad is a psycho. So fair play to him.
Fair play to him is right. I'll stick with you, Andy, for Jess Paulo. I mean, he's on every fight card in Ireland that takes place. He's starting to move over to the UK.
England.
And yeah, starting to move over to the UK now to get some fights as well. He picked up another nice submission win via rear naked choke over Jordan Rutherford. Another impressive performance by Jess.
Yeah, look, this was a Jess Paulo fight. It looked like a Jess Paulo fight. The first round, there wasn't a whole lot of damage, but it was another dominant grappling display from him. But then when he finally was able to kind of get off his shots, land a bit more damage, take the back and get the choke, that's exactly like, you know, if Jess Paulo has such a good base to work off of, but it's just he needs to, or in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, I think for when he's moving to the pros, there's got to be more damage. Like, because it'll just, with the 5-minute rounds, if you just leave, there's so much more of a risk of lads stealing rounds off you if you are not landing damage from those dominant positions. So to see him go in there and do that a bit more as the fight played on and get the choke was great to see. So another win for Jess Paulo, who God knows how many titles he has on the Irish scene, and I'm sure he'll be eyeing up another one at APFC in the short term.
100%. A good event overall, though, lads. Good to see, you know, a couple of the amateur fighters get an opportunity there. Obviously, the prelims, if you haven't seen, are available for free on YouTube. The main card is available on UFC Fight Pass. So some good exposure for anyone who's on that card as well. So credit to APFC. Shout out to Paul Brown traveling over there, doing a fantastic job as well. We're forever in his debt after announcing it as the Auld Triangle choke for Kikyo. So fair play to them. Let's head over to the interview with Pat Lehane. And we're going to talk to him ahead of his fight. Obviously, it was announced last week that he'll be taking on Roberto Romero at Combate Global, an Ireland versus Mexico event that's going to take place on December 17th over in the US. And I'll head over to myself to take us through that interview. And now we want to welcome Pat Lehane to the Auld Triangle. I believe it's for the first time. I'm not sure. Maybe it's the second time, Pat. Maybe you can confirm on that. But I know I've been speaking with you before. But
maybe the second time. I don't know.
Maybe the second time. Look, yeah, I think we might have been on before. But it's good to talk to you again, Pat. Coming straight off the announcement that you will be fighting Roberto Romero at Combate Global, and it's shaped as an Ireland versus Mexico card on December 17th. A fantastic day in the world, the same day as my birthday as well. So I get to watch you beat up another person on my birthday, and I'm looking forward to it, Pat. How are things? I haven't been talking to you in quite some time. We haven't seen you in quite some time. How are things, and how have things been with you? Yeah,
things have been grand. I mean, I've been out for it's been a year since I fought. I got like a couple of injuries and things like that, but we're back on track now. Try to finish out. It was looking like I wasn't going to fight this year at all, but we managed to squeeze one in at the end of the year. So things have been grand, tipping away.
That's good. Like, for a lad that does fight so frequently like yourself, a year is a very, very long time. How do you kind of deal with your time on the sidelines? I know that you love fighting and love getting prepared for fights. And I'm sure, we just heard Volkanovski talking about it after the fight with Islam Makhachev this past weekend, that he really struggles when he doesn't have a fight lined up, when he's not getting prepared to fight. Do you kind of understand what he's saying when he's saying things like that?
Yeah, 100%, man. It's just, there's nothing, like, you're not aiming for anything. There's nothing to do. Nothing really excites you. So yeah, I don't know. I suppose we're similar that way. A lot of fighters probably are. When you get injured and things like that, you drink. Go on the sauce. There's nothing else to do. Like, fucking.
What kind of injury did you have, or could you train at all? You don't mean to go into specifics or anything like that, but were you completely out for that time? And did it stem from your last fight, or was it in getting prepared for another? Because I know that you had a couple of fights lined up after your last fight as well, but they didn't really work out.
Yeah, so my last fight, I got this real bad cut on my eye. It was from a knee when I was down. It split my whole eye open, and then the doctor like glued it together right after the fight. And obviously he didn't clean it correctly, so there was obviously bacteria or whatever in it, and it got infected. It got really bad. My whole face swelled up and went down into my neck, and it was terrible. I had to wear sunglasses for about 3 weeks. Like, it was very, very bad. So then I had to wait ages for that to heal up properly. It's still kind of like, I don't know. It just didn't heal correctly. So I got a bit of a saggy eyelid now, but that finally cleared up. So I hadn't sparred in ages or done any contact because I didn't want it to open up again. And then I got scheduled to fight. I think it was maybe June or something, May or June. So I was in fight camp over in the States training for it, and a week and a bit out from the fight, it was my last I had done my last sparring session. We were just flowing, and then I just got another bad injury in training, so I had to pull out of that one.
Must be frustrating to be dealing with stuff like that, especially cuts this early in your career as well. Is it something that's going to be worrying you going forward? Is it something that you have to kind of change your style to kind of counteract when you're preparing and when you're actually going into fights?
Well, yeah, now I wear headgear when I spar. I grease up and all that stuff. So, I mean, yeah, it's definitely on my mind or whatever. But it's part of the game. The lads in the gym call me Pad a Peach because I fucking bruise like a peach, man. I get a black eye every sparring session, and my skin just cuts so easily. So I don't know.
So the leech is dead, is it? And the peach is alive.
Yeah, it's Pad a Peach, man.
From the leech to the peach. I love it.
Yeah.
Last time we saw you in there, Pat, Jose Ferreira was your opponent. Lost a unanimous decision.
Yes.
How do you feel about that fight and how it went down? I know it's a year ago now, but you must be egging to get back in after that fight.
Yeah, it was a tough fight. Your man's good. He's still. Oh no, he lost his last fight. So I was meant to be fighting the fella that beat him, like a week before this scheduled one. But then they changed it for the Ireland v Mexico card, and I got a new opponent or whatever. But it was a good fight. Like, it was fun. I learned a lot from it, and obviously I was sick to lose. But it was that bad cut in the very first round. It was actually an illegal. Well, not to go into details, but I think it was an illegal knee. I was getting up, and he kneed me in the head. It sliced my eye open. Kind of went downhill from there. But I hung in for 3 rounds, and I dropped him a couple of times, but it wasn't enough. It was a good fight. I loved the fight. It was one of the. It tested me, so it was a character building fight, I suppose.
Yeah, I guess a lot of your fights are character building fights. In fairness, the way you fight, you always go to war. Look at you mentioned. Obviously you went in there with Ferreira in the last fight. You're also supposed to be scheduled to fight Leonardo Morales. That's a guy. When you fought Ferreira, he was in 7-0, 8-0, I believe, and Ferreira is 11-0 right now. So you're getting matched up with these undefeated kind of really good fighters too. Do you think that your name is being built off these undefeated fighters at Combate Global, or how do you feel that you're being marketed by Combate? Obviously, you're coming in and you're headlining an event here and stuff like that, but how do you feel about being put in against these undefeated killers?
I mean, fuck it, I love a challenge. Like, I've never backed down, but like, I look at my first tournament I fought. Both fighters I fought had 14 pro fights, or maybe some of them had more. So, I mean, that worked out, and it worked out in my favor. So I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of fighters, even fighters in Ireland now. Not to drop names, but they're fucking. They're getting easy. They're doing it right. They're not shitting on them, but they're taking easy fights at the start of their pro careers or whatever, which is correct. But I mean, Combate pay pretty well, and if they tell me to fight someone, I'm going to fight them.
100%. So ever since we talked, it was always about you don't care about what the opposition is. You care about getting in there, getting the scrap on, getting paid. Is that still your mentality?
Yeah, pretty much.
Short and sweet answer.
It's been a while since it's been a year since I got paid from MMA. So I got to go in and get back to my winning ways, get back on the roll. I mean, I got this fight in 8 weeks now, and then I got the Copa Combate for the one for 100K in February. So it's going to be a quick turnaround. And after February, we're just going to keep it going. You know, have a good 2024. Yeah, just rack up the wins.
Do you have a job outside of fighting, Pat?
Yeah, I do. I work security.
So have you been having to rely on that then, I suppose, for income the last while, obviously, having not been fighting?
Yeah, I recently started working in a casino now, so I'm working like 12-hour shifts. They're a killer. So I'm up all night and my sleep's all messed up. But now that we're in fight camp, we're going to change all that and, you know, maybe try hopefully get a few sponsors in and whatever.
Hope you're keeping all that pay now and not dabbling on the blackjack then after your shift.
Oh no, not a hope. I've never been a gambler, but when I see those people come in, they come in all happy. None of them leave happy. Like they're all fucking fairly depressed now. So, not for me.
Pat, you're 2 years into your pro career now. Obviously, you've a heap of fights already. We've been somewhat critical at times of Combate, more so because I'll speak for myself here, a bit worried that like certain Irish fighters in general, it's kind of hard for Irish fans to watch the fighters. It's hard to get access to the fights, etc. But obviously on the flip side, you've been quite active and you've had really, really tough fights. Like, are you happy with where you're at 2 years into your pro career? And like, how would you view your time at Combate so far?
Yeah, I think it's pretty good. Like they've been very good to me. They treat me very well. They pay for me to get my visa, so now I have an American visa. They've given me good money for my fights. They've given me a headline event. They've given me, they've got me on Air Sports for one of my fights. So, they're doing good. Like I don't know, it's weird. I know the way they don't post some of the fights and things like that. Like of the undercards, and it can be weird that way. But I mean, I'm happy with where I am.
Yeah, I think you're the unique example because you kind of came into the tournament format straight up, and most of your fights have been on main cards and stuff like that. To kind of follow up on Andy's, we had been struggling to watch maybe Nadine Abbott-Bissett's fights and Dee Begley fights. We've been telling people what Combate have been telling us is that you can watch these in Ireland, and then when it comes to it, we're paying for the pay-per-view, we're not buying it. But that was a little bit frustrating from our end. It's frustrating, I guess, for anyone wanting to watch in, but it's kind of a two-way street. You're going and fighting with Combate, you want Combate to promote you in the right way. But I think and the group of fighters that did go over there, you've definitely been treated in that way and being built. Would you feel you've been built in an appropriate manner?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy with them. I think everyone in the company likes me, and I think they're doing it's fair. Like it's a fair trade, and they're paying me well, and I fight. I put on exciting fights, and don't be a bitch about it. Like
100%.
It's a fight game. Like, you know what I mean? We're here to fight. We're not here to fucking get good matchups, and
They talk about numbers quite a lot in Combate in terms of the viewership and I guess the amount of people they're watching on the events every single week. Like, do you feel that type of support, or that you're gaining the traction from all these viewers that they're getting every week and getting popular over on that side with that kind of viewership as well?
I don't know. My followers haven't gone up crazy amount since I started, like American followers and things like that. I haven't gained, said they have however many hundreds of thousands of viewers every week on their show. But I mean, I don't know. That's not my department, so we'll leave that to them.
Pat, you've got I've noticed here we've I was about to say Proper 12. Forged Irish Stout are sponsoring this event, this Ireland versus Mexico. It was announced. Have you gotten the call yet? I see a lot of Irish fighters getting sponsorships now. Have you gotten the call yet?
Yeah, I mean, well, hopefully we're gonna give it a go at least. I don't know. Fuck it, see what happens.
I mean, I think it's only right? I mean, like
if I can get this, huh?
You're the guy that's going to be on the show. You're the Irishman represented. I think it'd only be appropriate for you to get a few dollars from Mr. McGregor.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully, if I can do that, then I can quit the job and train full time again. But we'll see.
Do you know what fight this next one is at? You have been fighting at lightweight and featherweight. Excuse me, lightweight and featherweight. Is this fight at featherweight, or is it at lightweight, or is it at a catchweight? You fought catchweight a couple of times.
No, it's at featherweight again. Yeah, featherweight.
And then leading into the tournament next year, that'll be a featherweight tournament too, will it?
Featherweight tournament, yeah.
And does that give you
It's a
pathway
fucking-
towards the title?
Yeah, I think if I win this and win the tournament, I mean, I think I'm gonna get a belt in next year for sure.
How many fights do you have left on your contract?
4 left.
4. So that would be
So
the one fight in
this
December,
one-
three potential fights in the tournament.
No. So the tournament only counts as 1 on your contract.
Really?
So
So
how many
yeah.
possible fights are in the tournament?
4, I think, 3 or 4, 3.
so you would just get paid per se if you were just fighting for one fight, even though you might possibly go in and fight 3 or 4 fights on that night. Is that the way it worked before?
No, they pay you. No, they pay you per fight. But even on the tournament, I can't remember how much. I think it's separate to your actual fight contract, I think. So it's like whatever, you win one, you get a certain amount. You win the second one, you get that plus a lot more than the first one. Then you win again, whatever. Like, you get more every fight basically. You get a show and win. You know.
Yeah, 100%. So obviously your main focus over the next year or so is getting those wins in, working towards the title, and then are we thinking any further after that?
Yeah, for sure. We're always thinking about it, but you know, I'm happy where I am right now.
Okay,
So,
fair enough.
we'll talk about that when we get to it, you know.
Our fellow Corkman, John Mitchell, has been Andy, has been racking up some good wins in the PFL. Have you been watching along, and what do you think about what's been going on with John? And are you happy to see him get to the final and get the chance to compete in Dublin?
Yeah, fair play to him, like, you know what I mean? Fellow Cork man doing his thing. Happy for him.
Pat, when you go over
you've had
to
some-
these events, beforehand, I always noticed that a lot of the Irish fighters train at like the local gyms around. Is it Kilcliff that you go to before, or where is the plan this time even?
Yeah, no. So I'm friends with one of the coaches in that, and I normally live in his garage and train and go to Kilcliff and then go to his gym as well. So that's what I've been doing recently. But I think with me not fighting for a year and the injuries, and I picked up an injury when I was over there a week out, and you know, it was just frustrating because if I was at home and I was with my training partners and they knew I had a fight in 1 week, and you know, they know not to go that hard or whatever week out. So this time I just need to get the fucking fight. So I'm just gonna stay in Cork. I might go up to Dublin a little bit, but I don't think I'm gonna go over there early this time. Just fight week.
Have you been training in Dublin much at all?
I used to before lockdown. I was up there every week, but now not so much.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Look, when you fight in Combate, at times it can look like a car crash in the cage. They're very, very entertaining fights. When you're going in there, are you expecting these type of fights? Like they seem to happen more often than not with you.
Not really. Like, it's just fucking when you get in there, man. It's just you just gotta love fighting. Like, it's just fun to do. Like, I love just scrapping people. I know it's not the smartest way to fight, but it's fun and it's entertaining, and I think, you know, people want to watch that. So I want to have a brilliant like highlight reel at the end of my career that I can look back on and make a lot of money.
When you go in, are you thinking, right, I'm gonna, you know, stick him with a low kick, keep him at the end of my jab, we'll stick out a nice game plan here, or are you just walking in and thinking, right, let's just throw down?
I mean, I don't know. Maybe we have a game plan. We have a game plan at the start, but then once you get in there, you know, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face or whatever.
And what would Liam Hogue be saying to you?
Liam, obviously he makes a game plan or whatever, but you know, we've been with each other for so long. We know what we're doing. Like, you know, if he thinks I can out-scrap him, like, we'll do it. You know.
Yeah. And so when you're in these exchanges, like, what's going through your head?
Nothing, just flowing. Nothing at all.
In flow state.
Yeah, well, that's what you want. Like, if you can do that, do that. But I mean, you know, sometimes when you're getting fucking smashed and you're on your back and you're bleeding everywhere, sometimes a few thoughts slip into your head, but you know, you don't think too deeply. You just keep pushing on.
The upcoming event's been deemed as Ireland versus Mexico, and I know I'm not going to ask you to name any fighters if so, but are you hoping for this one that you could potentially be joined by some of your teammates in SPG Cork on it?
We were thinking about it, but there's there's a few people that are close to it, but I think for this one it just doesn't suit them. I think they're gonna do the year, finish the year at like say amateur, and then Dan, we're gonna get Dan on it, and he's gonna do the year amateur, and then Kerry, she's gonna go next year, I think.
Gym's been kind of like booming, I guess, in recent times. Like you've got a lot, like ever since your emergence in pro, you've had a lot of them coming through amateur. I know you've had one or two come into the pro as well. What's the vibe kind of like in the gym at the moment with everyone kind of coming up at the same time and kind of maybe elevating to the pro ranks?
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, fuck, our gym is just getting a whole new look now. We're getting the whole gym, the whole upstairs, all matted, like it's all white, one big mat, and all the walls are getting done, and the cage is getting redone, and we're getting a lot of fighters coming up, and it's an exciting time for the gym. So yeah, there's a few people going pro next year.
Pat, we were talking about game plans and stuff like that. December 17th, Roberto Romero. What's the game plan going in? Have you had a chance to get a look at this lad? And how do you?
Yeah, we were at that award ceremony thing there like last year or 2 years, however long ago it was. He won an award that night as well. So me and all the lads, we all went out, partying together in Miami. So I spent the night with him. Like, he's a sound fella. We got on very, very well. But we're just gonna fight now. He's a cool dude, but yeah,
we have a few pints again after.
Sorry about that there, I got a call.
No worries. Will you have a few pints again after? You will.
I mean, we'll see. If 4 Irish Stout wants me, I might have a couple of them, like.
100%. Well, thanks for taking the time, Pat. It was really great to get to catch up with you again. Delighted to see you getting the headline slot at this event, December 17th. Obviously, have you heard any details on if, confirmation on where it might be broadcast? Will it be Facebook? Will it be going back to air again? Have you heard anything along those lines?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
I'll find out when I'm over there,
No hassle. We'll keep an eye out. We'll share the details whenever we can. But for now, Pat, thanks very much for joining us. We'll chat to you again the next time, man, and all the best on December 17th. Alrighty, let's do a little bit of housekeeping, guys, before we wrap it up here. We'll head over to my neck of the woods. Dario Sinagoga, Ireland's own, out there fighting on BFL, Battlefield Fight League, over in Canada in Vancouver, took on Ashton Carlton and picked up a very, very good win in the process as well. Dario, a guy who has been struggling to make weight at lightweight in recent times. This fight is at welterweight, and a good win, Andy, for him overall, and back into the win column for Dario.
Yeah, and look, had to fight hard for it. The first round didn't really go his way, but he battled back, and so he was kind of, I really noticed he was doubling up on his jabs and putting the pace on his opponent as the fight wore on. And it's good to get back. And when you hear them talking about this guy, it's that they see him as like a guy to fight for the title and could potentially go on to the UFC out of BFL. So obviously, you need to find a consistent weight class where you can make weight and get the wins in there. But he's found a new weight class back in the win column, so something to build on for Dario.
100%. McKinney Ademe was also on the card, or did his fight take place? His fight was off, Caoilte, isn't it?
Fight was off, so I think that was supposed to take place. It was on the card originally, but no, it didn't take place in the end, and it was just Dario from the Irish contingent who got to compete at the event, and so maybe for the next one we'll get to see him, but no, I saw that one was cancelled.
Yeah, so we are going to talk a little bit about Dom Norcus and Julian Renault. Their fights were cancelled, but I see breaking news here, Andy does have about Dom Norcus.
Just off the wire, I believe Dom Norcus is actually booked again. So he's going to be fighting in a couple of weeks against a guy called Kevin Enns in Germany on the 11th of November. So don't actually know which promotion that is because there's 3 events on. But take that for what you will. If I'm wrong, well, then I'm wrong. So
perfect. He was supposed to be fighting at Caoilte MMA. That event was called off due to the storm in Ireland as well. So obviously he didn't get the chance along with Julian Renault to get out there. Martin McNulty lost Caoilte in his fight this past weekend as well. Care to share the information about that?
Yeah, Martin just back from his studies in Brazil. I think he finished up his whatever college degree he was doing, and He's come back, taking a fight at MMA GP, but unfortunately wasn't able to get the win. He lost by a decision, but look, he put up a good performance. He was able to land some nice calf kicks. He was trying to kind of implement more of a striking for this one, didn't really get the opportunity to get the win from it. Dropped his opponent a few times, but did show some good moments as well. And look, good fight for him. But on to the next one, really. And I think he's looking to be a lot more active there, maybe one by the end of the year and a few more next year then. So we'll see what's next for the Irish abroad.
100%. Upcoming fight news, Alan Philpott has been announced for Eternal MMA 81 on the 4th of November 2023. I know he's pushing for that title shot there as well, so another win here would kind of probably put him in prime position, and maybe we'll get the chance to speak with Alan ahead of that fight. It'd be great to catch up with him and see where he's at, but put together a good win in his last fight, and it'd be interesting to see how he does in his next fight as well. Obviously there was fights announced for Premier FC. Any names that we have there, lads?
So actually kind of a press release went out there earlier on where Dara Ward is going to be making his professional debut on the 1st of December. He's taken on an SBG Ireland fighter called Marion Matei. Apologies if I'm pronouncing that wrong. But they will go head to head in a welterweight bout. So Dara Ward's obviously been kind of electric in the last while on the amateur scene. Matei is, I think, 2-4 as a pro, so not the greatest of records, but 6 pro fights already to his name. So a test for Dara Ward as he makes his pro debut. And then Janderson Castro is taking on Corneliu Lascar. Janderson's going to be back fighting on Irish soil, and that'll be the main event. So that should be a good one. But that's the only 2 fights that they've announced so far. And then the greatest announcement in the history of Irish MMA, Cage Conflict. You're absolute legends for doing this. I love it so much. I'll be completely honest. I was messaging one of these lads on Instagram. I've no idea who he is, Zamar, but this is the greatest one ever. And it's Dara Loughran from ZKJ is going to take on Dara Loughran from Fight Academy Ireland.
Love it. Who do you think is going to win, Andy?
My money, I guarantee, if you lose this bet, come to me. I guarantee Dara Loughran wins this.
I think so too. I think there's a good chance of it, and that's the perfect way to wrap up episode 43 of the Auld Triangle podcast. Thanks to everybody for listening. Thank you to Pa for coming on. Thank you for Denis for coming on. Thanks to everyone for listening, and too, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, give us an old 5 stars on Spotify, tell a friend, give us an old retweet. We really appreciate the support. Until the next time, we'll see you again. Caoilte, see us out.
Ramila Mahgrib, agus Longafall.